your host, Rob Lively, and this is Telling Tales, Western Maine Story Place, where we feature outstanding tellers. Today's program is part of a 6-part series on the role of stories and storytelling in building peace. In fact, we're calling it Building Peace Story by Story, and it's a cooperative relationship between Western Maine Storytelling, Mount Blue Television, and the Peace Alliance. We will have 3 tellers from Western Maine Storytelling and 3 tellers from the Peace Alliance. The mission of the national nonprofit Peace Alliance is to empower civic action toward a culture of peace through education, advocacy, and mobilization. We will have more information about the Peace Alliance at the bottom of your screen, and also the 3 tellers from the Peace Alliance as they join us in future shows. They can talk more about the Peace Alliance and their role in it. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Valentina Ortiz, who is representing Western Maine Storytelling and who is actually coming to us from Mexico. She tells stories of ancient and modern Mexico, where she is the ambassador of the country's oral tradition, and where, as we will see today, she tells stories of healing. So welcome, Valentina. Welcome to the show.
Hello. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Well, thank you for joining us. So can you tell us something about your background and how it led to your work in healing?
Okay, I've been at it for many years, so I'll be really concise. My background, I start when I'm 6 years old by pure intuition doing theater. So for many, many years, I'm a theater person. And then I studied political science because I needed that to keep up my scholarship because I was studying in New York. From Mexico, I went to New York. And then I was completely into my political science side for quite a while. And when I came back to art, I became a drummer. And then the drumming led me to storytelling. And then I was so happy because I discovered that in storytelling, I could combine everything. I could use my experience through political science and my personal inclination to work towards finding justice and peace in communities, and also use my skills as an actress, as a musician, and as a reader, because I'm a writer also with literature. So storytelling for me was a panacea. It was just the possibility of being in a community, working the best I could to strengthen that community and open doors towards building peace and better conditions of life while doing my art. So it was perfect. I am totally in love with the healing process through stories.
Great. And I find it interesting and even amazing how all of these disparate parts of your life you've kind of brought together, or your interests in various things, and you've brought them all together, and you share them through storytelling. So
I've been very fortunate.
Yes. You have chosen 2 very different stories to talk about the healing process. What are they, and would you like to share them to us?
I'd love to share them, and if it's okay with you, I'll introduce a little bit each story.
Absolutely.
Yes, they are very different. I've been a storyteller for over 20 years, so I've been able to explore many things. And I've been working full-time in communities for over 12 years. And so the first story you will hear is a story that was developed with indigenous women, migrant women who live in Mexico City, but they come from a very small town, and they live in extreme poverty. They do not read or write. But for 7 years, we had a storytelling company, and I saw them change and flourish in they and their daughters and their granddaughters through this possibility of speaking out and making something beautiful with their life experiences. And I was very fortunate to learn all these stories that we used in these shows. So the first story I will share is the story of one of these grandmothers. Unfortunately, with COVID, 5 of them passed away, so she is gone. But I'm sure she's somewhere listening to us.
Mhm.
And she shared this experience, and I would tell this story on stage. Sitting behind me, I had the granddaughter. No, I had the daughter, and in front of me, I had the granddaughter sitting in front of me, and to one side, I had the Lucina, the woman. So this was an amazing experience for me.
Mm.
So this is the story of Lucina, la abuela. There are many sounds here, but here, even if it is dark, I am not afraid because the man, my husband, cannot find me here in the middle of the cornfield. Yes, there is the rustling, the rustling. I am afraid of snakes, the kimi, and I know she is there, but here the man can't find me because he beats me with the stick and it hurts. So I hide here at night. And soon my daughter, my Milia, is going to come. Oh, yes, she's going to bring a stick with fire, una tea encendida, and then we will chat together softly so we can't be heard. You see, she's my only woman daughter. She's my only daughter. I taught her to speak my language, Ñato, and we whisper in Ñato. We even laugh in Ñato. Oh, her brothers, no, I didn't teach them to speak Ñato, no, because their father beats them he lashes them con el fuete, because he says that Ñato language, indigenous language, gives nothing. Oh, it's only poverty. You need to speak Spanish. You need to speak Spanish so you can make money. So my husband says, well, woman, you have to learn to speak Spanish. But I don't speak Spanish. Oh, but my boys, I no, never, Ñato. But my Milia, my daughter, it's different, you see. She's the first. And we're connected. The time that I was really beaten, when my hand went crooked because I was beaten by my father-in-law, Milia was in the city. She was 13. She was a big girl now. She was working in the city. She felt it in her heart. And she took a bus and came back to see me. I tell her, Milia, don't do that. You have to understand, this is my luck. This is what God wants for me. This is the husband I have. I have to endure. But she doesn't understand. And she came and she took me and she brought me back with her to the city. Y ahí en la Ciudad de Mexico. Now I live with her. And things are different. She's grown now. She has her daughter living with her. And very strange. The other day, I was sitting in the living room and my granddaughter, she arrived with her new husband. They're very young. And they were arguing. Estaban discutiendo. And oh, I could feel the stick beating on my arm, how that burns. But my granddaughter just kept answering back to her husband. She wasn't afraid. And then she said to him, if you don't give me money, I'm not going to feed you. Oh, I just could hear the rustling of the snake in the dark, dark cornfield. So just in case, I ran to the store and I borrowed 2 eggs and I fed the man, because you see, an angry man can hurt you really bad. But the next morning, my granddaughter and her new husband, they came down to the kitchen laughing and hugging as if nothing had happened. That's strange. Here, things are really changing now. And I like it, because my little the great grandson and my great granddaughter, the little ones, they're speaking Ñato, my language. They even sing the song Bunga Mano Tsibutu, Bunga Mano Tsibuzu. They sing the songs in the streets outside the house. My daughter Milia is teaching her grandchildren to speak Ñato. And my granddaughter is not afraid of her man. Seems that things are changing. And I like it. Yes, I.
That is a wonderful story. There's so many dimensions to that. Two that stand out to me is intergenerational relationships and the role of language in preserving the culture.
Oh, yes.
Yes, yes.
And forbidding language as domination.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And it's sad the role that kind of the abuse that women were experiencing in your story. But
Mhm.
but but seeing the generational, is that unusual that the younger generation kind of goes back to the older generation, and especially with the language? I generally think of it kind of gets lost the farther away you get.
This is the result of a project. I was in the community many years, and I would really insist. Why don't we speak your language, and why don't you go back to? It's not going back. Just recuperate your wealth. And the women, I mean, I said it a few times, and they just started doing it and doing it and doing it. And then we did the show in their language, so they saw how outsiders were really avid to hear their language. They were very surprised. It's like instead of being ashamed, now they were proud, and they
Mm.
started wearing their beautiful clothes. And then they bought the beautiful clothes for the granddaughters, and it just started. It's like you take the lid off, and it just went on and on and on and on. And I could see that the women that were 80 years old would just observe and all. It's like, because they really had it rough in the town. And, now an urban woman, if you're being beaten on, you probably might just stand up for yourself, right? But
Mm.
in a small town, that was completely forbidden.
Mm.
So it was a beautiful process.
Yes, that's a beautiful story. Yes, and a great process. You have another story that's a little different.
Yes, this is another side of healing that I truly believe that healing is a community process, and it's so important that it happen in a community way. But we also have personal processes. So this story is a personal story about my life. But since your program and I see your passion is about peace, I thought this would be an interesting story to share. As I turned 17 in Mexico and finished high school, my mother decides I need a scholarship to go study in the US, basically because it was so violent in Mexico City for a young woman. She was terrified. So here I am, 17 in the US, in New York City studying. And it was such a culture shock. Ah, the abundance of food in the US, and then you throw away so much food. Looking at a fire hydrant pour clean water out during the whole day, I still do it. I would just stand there and count how many buckets of water were in that fire hydrant. Because in Mexico, there are many communities that people have to walk 2 hours to go fetch water, and they can only bring one bucket. There are towns where people stand in line for hours and only get one bucket because there's only one faucet for the whole town. So I'm in a total culture shock. And then a few years later, when I turned 19, there's the Grenada Invasion, the small island that was invaded in the 80s, end of the 70s, by the United States. And I witnessed this and I completely lose it. I say, how can it be possible that one government from one country go to another country and tell them what to do and then kill a few people in the process? I was so angry. And a few weeks after that, I see a sign that I could join a demonstration with the Salvadoran refugees because there's a major war in El Salvador, and the US is pumping all this money and military advisors into that war. And yes, I become part of those Salvadoran refugees that are organized. And about age 19 and a half, I am part of a political military group called the FPL, which was part of the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Force. And I would argue, I was studying political science at Barnard College, and I would argue with my teacher, Dennis Dalton, who wrote a book about Gandhi. So it was totally about nonviolence. And I remember making him get angry of all things. I feel so bad because I would tell him, how can you be nonviolent if the planes in El Salvador are dropping US bombs, are dropping napalm and burning children? How could you be nonviolent against bombs? So anyways, 3 years later, I am totally in Central America and I am part of the military forces. That means the guerrilla movement of El Salvador. Yes, we are about using weapons. That's the biggest honor, is to have a big gun. Yes, we are trained for military. Yes, we talk about how many soldiers were killed or about blowing up helicopters, which, yes, have people inside. It's war. It's major war. And that is what it is. And also, we talk about our dead people, so many civilians that are killed in such an unfair way. Peace comes for El Salvador in 1992, and I decide to recuperate my life in Mexico. By then, I have 2 kids. And then I stop being a guerrilla fighter and become a salsa drummer. Salsa music, tropical music, ritmo tambor y flores, ritmo tambor, tambor y flores. And as a drummer for 28 years, I work in different places, festivals, big parties, but bars, a lot of bars. And there's one particular bar I will never forget because that's where I became a nonviolent person. This bar was really interesting because from the stage, you could see the main entrance. You see, when you play 3 hours of music every day in the same bar, it can get a little tedious. So you entertain yourself, and as a storyteller, looking at the clients of the bar and, inventing where they're from, what their interests are. And in the bar, which was called the Piano of Pepe Arevalo, you could see how people came in, with whom they came in. And you could see how they went out, quite drunk probably, and with whom they went out. So here I am at the bar, and I wasn't playing the big drums, the congas. This group, I played the small ones, the bongos, and that implied that I had to play the cowbell. And if you play the cowbell, you're up front with the singers, and you have to dance, and you have to smile and play that cowbell and sing a little. So there I am doing my job when suddenly, through that main entrance, comes in one of my male friends. I smile, he smiles, I nod, he nods, he waves, and he says, I'm going to wait for you so we can have some beers. I like a lot of things in my life, but a beer and male company, that's good. So here I am, and I look up, and every single bar where the stage is with the musicians, there's a hidden big clock. And that clock is where you know how many more minutes you have to play. So I turn up and look at the clock, and it's going so slow. It's going like tick, tick. And my friend is there, that tick. But it's okay. I do my thing. I dance. I smile. I make my music. And then at that door is another male friend, the really handsome one, the one that doesn't call you, just pops up and you really have to see. And he's standing there and he waves and I nod. And then he says, I'll wait for you to have a beer. I don't smile. I dance and play. And then I look up at the clock, and the clock is going tick, 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 which means the set is going to finish, and I'm going to have to get off that stage and make a decision. So I start weighing out my situation. I say, I have to leave with the first band because I have to be fair. He's the first one, but the other guy, he's really handsome. And I'm weighing out things when I see both men walk towards the back of the bar. And they stand there right where you buy your drinks. And one of them puts his hand in his pocket. And you see in Mexico, it's common to have maybe a little gun somewhere. And I know something bad is going to happen. And the other one, he lifts his arm and grabs the beer. And the other guy pays for it. But I just know that nuclear war is about to explode and everything is going to come down on me. And then I remember my friend Angie, the singer. Just a few weeks ago, 3 of her male friends arrived to her bar, and she has her own band, and they were playing there with her band. She was singing, and the men started to fight, and then she fought, and everything was broken, and the tables flew, and the chairs flew, and Angie ended up with 2 purple eyes. Oh, but that's nothing. What's really bad is that the whole group lost their job. I turned around on my stage and I saw the piano player. He has 5 kids. He needs the money. And then the trumpet player, he has a sick mother. He needs the job. I need our job. And I don't want to lose the job. And suddenly the 2 male friends start to walk almost together to the front door. And I can't smile. I can't dance. I'm just playing and watching them. And they stand there at the door and look at me. And one of them lifts his hand and waves, and the other one lifts another hand and embraces my other male friend. Both are embraced. They smile and say goodbye to me, and they leave together, happy. I finish playing our set. I throw the drums down. I get off the stage, and I go to my alone spot where I spend most of my nights on the corner in front of the 7-Eleven, and I buy 6 beers. I sit on the curb, lean on that lamp pole as always, and I am ready to drown my betrayal, my anger with those beers, with that alcohol. When suddenly I realize I have nothing to be sad about. On the contrary, those 2 men had just given me a beautiful lesson. They had shown me that when you think that war is going to explode and there's going to be violence, there's always a third option, an option of love. That even when the tunnel is so dark, there's always a little light at the end of the tunnel. Oh, yes. Those 2 men showed me that third solution. And that is the day I really understood what nonviolence was about. Nonviolence is about finding a loving option to conflict. And nonviolence is not just about 2 people or 2 groups confronting. What nonviolence really means is community. There are so many of us, so many minds, so many hearts, and together we can find a loving solution to what seems like a dark, unending tunnel. Together, we can turn things so there is no war. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thinking about different attitudes or understandings of war, of course, we have pacifism as one extreme. Then there's what's called the just war. Someone else started it, so I've got to react. And then there's the holy war, the crusade. From when you were 19 and you went south to become a guerrilla, how did you see that? Were you a crusader, or were you reacting in a sense, they've started it, I need to do something?
I guess all of the above.
Oh, yeah.
But for me, it was a total act of love. I know there was death implied, but we were so young and we were all completely ready, and many of them did die, to give our life so that others could have hope. And that was an act of total love. And then also, violence is so complex. And there were many Catholic priests involved in this war, the theology of liberation. And they brought so much also in the way of thinking the war. And starvation is violence. Not being able to access a doctor is violence. Being beaten by your husband and the society accepting this is violence. So the country was already in a total state of violence because people were starving. People didn't have education. People were being kidnapped and disappeared by the government. You had no freedom of speech. So that violence is already there. So the fact that then you start acting in a violent way to change things, the violence was already there. So it could be a just war, as you say. Now things have changed. So that's why we don't have guerrilla movements. But you have what is called, which is, if you want to look into it, it's really beautiful. It's these same groups that were fighting in the 80s, 70s, now are talking about something called the good living, which is called buen vivir in Spanish. And it's all about how we become community and how we go back to what we do have, which is the land, which is education, which is ourselves, which is our stories. And they talk about the right of being happy as an individual. And that is something you can fight for, the right to be happy. Because most of us people that are colonized, we don't even have concept. We don't even have that word. The indigenous women I work with, the Ñato women, they don't have a word for dreaming. Like I want to travel. They don't have that concept at all. So it's a really complex situation. But I don't know. I don't have regrets about what I did back then, but I am happy that now I can find that third solution. I have always been able to find it. It's amazing. It's like the thing is the possibility, what many storytellers are talking about now is the power of the pause. It's like, okay, stop the picture. I want to see what is really happening. And I step back. And then you find a third way of being useful, of moving things, hopefully so that there's not a violent explosion. But if violence is necessary when you're attacked, if that's the only way you're going to be heard, I don't know. I personally try not to be violent, but here in Mexico, they're killing just the people that defend a tree, defend a river, they're killing newspaper people. It's like, I don't know what the solution is.
Well, as you say, you seek the third way, which is that of love and understanding and trying to understand other people and to love them.
And trust the goodness. For me, being in the US, I spent 2 years in the US a year ago, and I just kept trusting people, and suddenly the goodness of these people would come out in an amazing way. So, and listening to each other as storytellers, I think that is our main message, is listen to the person next to you. Because usually when there's a confrontation, because we don't listen to the other. You know, maybe one side has to do more listening than the other. That's unfortunate. But, so, yes.
Well, thank you so much. This has really been very enlightening. I've loved your stories. There will be information about you, your website. Can we display your email address at the end?
Yes, please.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much. And we'll also display information about the Peace Alliance so that folks can learn more about that. So, Valentina, thank you once again for being part of Telling Tales and our story of building peace story by story. So,
okay, it was an honor.
Thank you.
And please keep up your work. It's amazing.
Well, thank you.
Amazing project.
Thank you. And thank you for watching, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you at the next show, the next program. Thank you and goodbye.